Next, we're going to implement the ability to delete a category.
We're going to implement slide to delete for that categories. So let's go to categories view controller. And we'll need to implement a new data source function to give our cell the ability to slide to delete. Let's navigate down to our extension where we implement the data source, conform to the data source in delegate, and begin typing commit. And the very first function that pops up, table view, UI table view, commit editing style for row index path, press enter. And to give the cell the ability to delete, let's access that. So if editing style is equal to delete, then we need to actually perform the delete. We shouldn't probably actually perform the delete in this function, so let's create another function to do the deletion for us. Let's do that underneath our prepare for segue function, and let's create a new function, and let's call it delete category. Delete category is going to take in a parameter called index path of type index path. And here's our opportunity to actually delete the category. Let's get the category that the user wants to delete. So let category equals categories at index path.row. And once we have the category, we need to get the managed object context from that category. So let context equals category dot managed object context. This is actually optional, and we shouldn't actually perform this if this is optional, because that means we can't actually delete this record from the core data, and we can't actually save the deletion and persist it forever. So let's do a guard let context equals category dot managed object context.
I have a question for you.
Else?
Have we elsewhere pulled the managed object context in this view controller?
We probably have. So if we navigate up, we have done that in our view will appear. But here we're actually, instead of pulling it from the category itself, we're pulling it from our UI application.
And I noticed before, though, we called it managed context. And for the sake of consistency, I'm going to vote for changing the word context to managed context so that it's used universally.
Perfect. So let's change context to managed context. And if this does not unwrap, let's simply return out of this function. Now that we've done this, here is our opportunity to actually delete the category from core data by accessing our managed context and calling its delete function and passing in the object that we wish to delete, which in our instance would be category. And now that we've done that, we actually need to save this change. To save a change, we do just like we've done when we've created a new entity. We actually have to save our context. Let's start that by wrapping it in a do block, because saving a context might throw an exception. And let's actually try to save our context by calling a try keyword, manage context dot save. Notice it throws an exception if something occurs. So that's why we mark it with the try. And let's handle the case that it might throw an exception by printing out could not delete. With this now, our category has actually been deleted from core data, but it will still actually persist on the table view. And Dale, why is that?
Well, the table view, when it last loaded, would have created cells for each of the categories. And so we need to get rid of that cell. And also we have here an array of category, and those items are in that array. So if we want an item removed from the array, we're going to have to remove it. The alternative would be we could fetch everything again and we could reload the table view again, but it's better to do something a little more surgical. So we delete it from the context, we remove it from the array, and we get rid of that table view cell.
Let's remove it from the array by accessing that array, categories, and calling its remove at function and passing the row that we wish to delete. Now that we've removed it from our array of categories, let's actually remove it from our table view. And we can do that by accessing our table view, categories table view, and calling its delete rows, which take in an index path, And let's pass it our index path for row animation automatic. We're not done though, because what if saving our context throws an exception? We go down here to the print could not delete call, but we're still not actually resolving the fact that the user tried to slide to delete. We need to actually reload the cell so that the ability to delete goes away. And we can do that by categories, table view, dot reload rows at index path. Let's pass it in our index path, and let's give it an automation of automatic. Now that we've done this, we can now delete categories if we call this function. But remember, we wanted to do it for slide to delete, and that required us to do it for this commit editing style. If the editing style is equal to delete, we need to call our delete category function. So delete category at index path. Let's build and run this application and now actually delete a category. Before I delete a category, let's examine the one we're going to delete. Let's delete Apple products, and if I click Apple products, notice how it has two expenses. I'm going to go back to our categories. Let's slide to delete. I'm going to click delete, and it's now gone. I can even prove to you that it's gone by reloading the simulator, which will trigger a new fetch from core data and prove to you that it is no longer around. Let's talk about what happened to those expenses though. I'm going to go to my XC data model D file, select the category expense, select my relationship, and let's expand the right hand side to look at the data model inspector. Notice this delete rule, cascade. What this means is since we deleted the category, all of its expenses that belonged to the category were thus also deleted. So it's not just one thing that we deleted at that time when we slid to delete. We actually deleted that category and those two expenses that belonged to it.
While we're here, let's take a look at something we haven't looked at before. This is also a representation of the relationship between category and expense. And you'll notice the double-headed arrow on the category leading to expense, meaning one to many, and the single-headed arrow where we're showing this expense has a relationship to a single category.